Hello, artists. Hello. So we're going to start our, thank you. We're going to start our first exercise, our first assignment, which is called the color wheel and color mixing. And it's geared to get you acquainted with your materials, get you started on mixing them and getting the feel for your paints. My kit did not come with the paper palette, so I'm going to use a paper plate, but your kit should have the paper palette with it. Other things that don't come in the kit but that you will need is, a paper towel, and eventually you'll need a rag. A rag. I have this old napkin. It became an art rag. And then my paper towel that I use for painting. Before we start painting, I want to get you started using your invisible glove. And I want to show you how much you need to use. You don't need to use a lot. And you don't need to remove your rings. You can see I don't even take these off when I box. They're all messed up. And so that's how much you need to get. You don't need to use a lot. And you're just going to rub it on your hands, between your fingers, on your nails. If you're a real messy painter, you can stick it all. You can add a little bit more to go up your arms. And it starts to feel sticky, and in a minute or two, it just subsides, and it just feels like maybe you have the residue of an old cream on. For the purposes of painting, I'm using my invisible glove, which comes in your kit. Next, I need you to pull out a paintbrush. And your kit comes with a whole bunch of different brushes, and we saw that during our introduction. And this brush is not your smallest, and it's not your largest. So it'll be perfect for what we're going to do. And the first thing you want to do before you ever paint is to wet your brush. And I'm using some old cup, but I've been using this little plastic cup now for a while, and so I'm going to continue to use it. And so before we ever paint, it's just like when you wash your hair, that before you put on any shampoo or conditioner, you have to wet it. So before we apply any paint to our brushes, we want to wet it. And what happens is the water goes from the hair into this metal band, and this is called the ferrule. And the ferrule squeezes the hair together. And what happens is, through capillary action, paint will want to come down in here. And over time, the paint starts to dry if you don't wet your paint brushes. A knife, this nice little palette knife we'll be using for mixing colors, but we also use this to create textures with our palette knife, and also to create sgraffito incised lines. So you need paper towel, you need your paints, you need a palette. Mine is this paper plate, but you should have a gray or white paper palette. And then you want to put on your gloves. In our kit, we have some watercolor crayons. And I just want to get you into the habit of using these instead of pencil to draw on your canvases or paper. Do your color mixes inside of a sketchbook, and I want to get you into the habit of trying out different color palettes in your sketchbook. And since we're working with acrylics this term, it's very easy because it dries and it doesn't migrate to other sheets. It'll be perfect. So you're just going to draw a circle on the full page, and what we're going to do is we're going to draw a triangle on there. So you can see my triangle isn't perfect, and neither is my circle, but whatever. Nobody's going to publish this. This is just for me to get to know my colors. And then after I draw my triangle up, it's very wonky. I'm going to draw a triangle going the other way, so I have a six-rayed star. And then I'm going to put white in the center of my palette, black, and then I'm going to start with my warm colors. And my warm colors are cadmium red hue. There it is, my cadmium red hue. I've had these open for a while. I'm just going to put a little drop of water on it. Keep it open longer. Next to my cadmium red, I'm going to put a bloop of cadmium yellow medium. And I want you to notice these tubes are big, so you don't have to be cheapy with this. Next to this yellow, you can put a little yellow ochre. And you can see the yellow ochre there. And then next to that yellow ochre, we're going to put a little bloop of cerulean blue hue. And so these are my warm bias, and we'll learn what that means in a little bit. My warm bias primaries. Next, on the other side, that's not a very cold red. Well, I have my primary red, which is really a magenta. Next to that, my lemon yellow hue. And next to that, my ultramarine hue. And so now I have my primary red, my lemon yellow, and my ultramarine blue. And you can see that we have 2 reds, 3 yellows, and 2 blues, plus black and white. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take our brush and we're going to start. I take my brush, I dip it. Notice, I want you to notice that underneath everything I have this piece of paper that I've put down. It's white butcher paper, but you can just put down the rest of, after you've created your tabletop easel from the box your kit comes in, you can set down the rest of the box on a tabletop to protect it, or you can open up a grocery bag and set that down. All right, so what I want to do is I want to take a dab of my lemon yellow and immediately clean my brush by wiping it on my paper towel, my brush in the water. And now I can pick up my cadmium yellow medium and put that next to it. And this doesn't have to be a perfect triangle. I'm just getting acquainted with my colors. Clean that up. And now I'm going to take my yellow ochre. If I just look at it, I can see that my lemon yellow is much lighter than my cadmium, which is much stronger, and then my dark yellow is my yellow ochre. Look at that. Now I'm going to take my cadmium red light, and that is practically a neon red. It is so bright, oh my goodness. And then next to that, I have my primary red. And these are very different I don't know if you can see that. They're very, very different from each other. Let me show it to you. This red is much more orange, and this red is almost purpley. And this looks like a magic marker, and this looks like a really cute lipstick. I wouldn't mind wearing that. Next, I'm going to grab my warm blue. And I'm going to put it here. Hey, these paints are not bad. I thought because they were student grade that they would be bad, but they're not. They're really good. They have really good pigmentation. Why am I paying so much money for the artist grade when these are so good? Good question. With these 3 primaries plus black and white, I can theoretically mix every color that I ever hoped for. So these are my primaries. So why don't you write down now? So you wrote color wheel, write down primary, yellow, red, blue. The thing is, we've got three yellows and 2 blues and 2 reds. So you're gonna mix, you can mix a lot of different secondaries here. So I'm gonna start with my cool yellow, and I'm going to take a little bit of my cool red, and I put them together. Take a little bit more of that yellow. There we go. Gives me a different, this yellow and this red, and what do I get? This one's going to be much different. That looks so much more like a natural clay. And this red, and see what kind of color combination I get. It's going to be different still. Let's take a little bit more, still different. And so I've created 4 oranges. Because I have so many yellows, I can create many variations of orange. Now I want to do the same thing with green. And that gives me one kind of green. Look at that. That looks like freshly mowed grass. So here I feel the difference in the color here. And that gives me yet a different yellow green, a different green. All right, time for violet. And violet is the art term for purple. Where am I going to have, here's some spot, here's a spot. Ultramarine blue and my primary red, which is a magenta. And that should give me a nice purple. And I'm going to have to exit my star here because I kind of made it a little too small. If I want to see what that purple looks like, I'm going to add a little bit of white to it at the bottom so you can see. Where's my purple? So you can see what that purple looks like a little bit. Add some white to it so you can see it better. Because purple is almost black. That's a very nice purple. And blue. Get a little bit more red. There we go. That there is a purple. That's very different. But look at the purples, man. So this is the reason why I have to give you 2 kinds of reds and 2 kinds of blues. Because if you don't have the ultramarine and the magenta or primary red, no way you can mix a nice purple. You're always going to get these grade purples. All right, so what we see after organizing our primary colors and mixing our secondary colors is that the hue or the color changes. So now what I want you to do is to mix some tertiaries. You don't have to mix every single one of them, but just to give yourself a flavor, since you've already got your secondaries on the palette. I mean, look at this palette. There's a lot of color. So a tertiary is when you mix a primary with a secondary. So if I take this yellow and I add it to this green, I have a yellow green, which looks a lot like some of the new leaves coming up this spring. Let's try this one. This one and this one. You know, there we go. That's a little different now. How about this one? There. It's a little bit more yellow to be more yellow-green. That's it. So there's my blue here, and I'm going to add some more of that blue to this green. And now I've got a blue-green. Wow, that's a really, man, wouldn't that make a beautiful, oh, that would be a super cool color for suede shoes. It's very, very like a dark pine, huh? I'm going to take this yellow and mix it with this orange. And I've got myself a yellow-orange. And now, all right, how about reds? I take this red and this orange, and I create, maybe that'll give me something a little bit more. There we go. At least that shows a little. That's why it looks so weird over there. That goes here. It's so strange for me to be doing things upside down. And then this guy goes here. Here's my red, blue, violet. A pretty color. All right, so now I'm going to make this into a red violet. Now we're going to see some difference here. I'm going to red violet. I'm going to put some more of that blue violet here. There, blue violet. All right. And then some of this red with this violet. Yellow and red gives you orange. Red and blue gives you violet. Yellow and blue gives you green. And then our tertiary are yellow and orange give you yellow-orange. Red and orange give you red-orange. Red and violet give you red-violet. Blue and violet give you blue-violet. Blue and green give you blue-green. And yellow and green give you yellow-green. So when we think about the 7 contrasts of colors, we've already covered the first contrast, which is a contrast of chroma or a contrast of hue. Hue and chroma refer to color. So what this basically means that in a painting, you can have different chromas, different hues to make a painting. So you use different colors. Something that you'll notice when you look at this is that yellow, lemon yellow, is the lightest color on our palette, and that our violets are our darkest color. I mean, these are so dark, they almost look black. I had to add white to the purple so that you could see what color you had mixed because it's so dark. So what this tells us is also that colors not only have different chroma or different hues, colors also have different values. They can be lighter or middle tone or dark. And as you look here, you can see that the warm colors have a tendency to be lighter than the cool colors, which have a tendency to be darker. And I'm saying that these are warmer because don't they feel warmer? Warm colors are associated with fire and with sunlight, and warm and cool colors are associated with grass, with trees, with ice, with water. Okay, so this is the first sheet, our first color mixing exercise. And what I want us to do now, we've learned that colors have different values and different chroma. And so now what we're going to do, I'm going to set that aside. I'm going to flip the page, and I want you to pick one of these primaries, one yellow, one red, and one blue, to create a chromatic scale. And so what we're going to do is draw 3 bars. And on one side you're going to have white, and on the other side you're going to have black, and in the center you're going to have each of the primaries. I'm going to go and wash and get fresh water, and I'm going to just smush it up towards the black, and I'm going to smush it towards the white. My white, and blend it and start to blend. And as I blend my white out, there's less of my white and more of the yellow until I get to the center, which should be pure yellow. Now if I fully, so that I have a pure black here, and I'm going to slowly blend my black into the yellow. It's very transparent, this yellow. Very, very transparent. All right. And so what we get is we get a value scale of our yellow. And can you see something remarkable? So my yellow doesn't even, you can barely see the differences between the yellow and the white, the steps, because yellow is such a light color. But you can see it more dramatically as we move towards the black. And look at what happened to the yellow as we move towards the black. It doesn't turn into a dark yellow. It totally turns into a green. I mean, it's a khaki green, to be sure, kind of military green, but it's green. And this is the reason why I've added yellow ochre to our palette, because if you want a dark yellow, you got to buy it. You can't mix it. You get green instead of dark yellow. So look at that. So now we've noticed that yellow is our lightest color, other than white. And we have now mixed yellow with white, and that's a tint. And we've mixed yellow with black, and that's a shade of yellow. Let's try it with red. You know, these are color mixing exercises. You don't have to be exact with how you paint it in. You're just basically getting a feel for how you mix your colors. And now I'm going to grab my black. I'm going to grab a little bit more red and go a step down. You can see I need more black here to make this step a little bit. There we go. This color mixing is very meditative. Enjoying that process. And that's what I want you to be able to do this quarter. You know, the world out there is a super mess right now. But when you know it, you can carve out a little bit of peace right here. So now we have our tints, our light pinks. Tints are light values of our red. And we have our shades, our dark values of red. Let's do the same thing with our blue. And let's do our cerulean, because that's kind of like a sky blue. See what that looks like. Boy, that's... Layer it right on top. Wow, it's already starting to mix. My blue is so pigmented. Look at that. That's so beautiful. All right. Look at that. It's like twilight. So pretty. And then now let's go with the white the other way. Come on, white. I've done quite a few values shifts here. And we're going from pure white to the lightest tints of blue, all the way to the darkest shades of that cerulean blue. And so you can do this with every single one of your primaries if you want to, but for now it's enough that you get a feeling for how to mix tints by adding white and how to mix shades by adding black. And so what we have done then is we have mixed our, did you stick? Is we have mixed our primaries, secondary, and tertiaries. So we've already worked with our contrast of hue. And incidentally, because yellows are lighter than violets and oranges are lighter than greens, we've also started to work with values. And now that we've added white to our colors creating tints and black to our colors creating shades, we've moved into our second contrast, which is that all colors have values as well. They have hue, but they also have value. And so which contrast have we already used? We've used the contrast of hue, and we've used the contrast of value. So we're gonna set this one aside and do our next assignment, our next color mix, which is hue contrast versus hue constant. And this is an exploration of monochromatic and analogous colors. Is next to my value scales, I am going to create a very simple abstract composition which is going to use at least 6 values of my favorite color. So I'm going to be mixing white into my color, and I'm going to be mixing black into my color, and I can also be mixing gray into my color. So I'm just going to do this weird little shape. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 little shapes. So good. That gives me enough room to have many. And actually my favorite color is not this blue. It's kind of like a little periwinkle. It's the ultramarine with some of the primary red. So I'm going to grab ultramarine. I'm going to grab some of the primary red. And I'm going to go ahead and that's pretty close to a little bit more blue. That's more my favorite color right there. Here. And where else do I want to see this color? I think here. So it almost looks like a parentheses of it. Okay. And now I'm going to make some tints of it. Let's make some tints right here. And take this light blue here. I'm going to add a tiny bit of black to it to make a gray. And it'll almost start to look greenish as soon as I add some black to it. You'll see. It'll just change completely. And I'm going to go ahead and put it next to it so you can see when I add a little bit of gray, a little bit of black and white to that blue, it grays it down. And it almost looks like it's a different color, but it's not. It's just a tone of it. Tone means that it's a gray value of it. I think I'll put that gray value here. Actually make it even a little darker gray. Let's add a little bit more of a gray to that. It almost looks like we have a different color altogether here, right? And then I haven't made really dark color of this. Let's grab some of this and pure black to that, like real dark of it. I think I need some more bright again. This makes like a medium. Yeah. Something bright here. Maybe I'll have this shape blend. Let's make it blend a little bit more. And then let it go into so see, I have created an abstraction that has very light value of my color, which is this color, middle values of it. So tints and middle values, I have shades, which are the color mixed with gray, and then I have shades, the color mixed with black, and then I have tones, the color mixed with grays, and I can get something that is actually very colorful with just that one blue plus white and black. A monochromatic color scheme, whether it's your favorite color or a different color, means that the artist has used one color plus all the blacks and all the whites and all the grays at their disposal mixed in with that one color to create a pretty interesting composition. That is one way in which you can use color. Next, let's use what we call analogous colors. So if we go back to our color wheel, and now I was working with this blue. Analogous colors means that I look to the right and to the left of my color. So if I'm doing an analogous color scheme of blue, I'm going to do blue-green and blue-violets. And all of the lights and all of the darks next to it. I could just as easily do yellow with yellow-green and yellow-orange. Or I could do red with red-orange and red-violet. But since I've done this blue, I'm going to go ahead and do an analogous color scheme that looks pretty similar. So let me see if I can get an approximation of this. And this one is going to be analogous. All right, so it's not the same, but I'm going to try to create a blue, violet, and blue-green color study using this basic blue that I have, the ultramarine. I'm going to add a little bit more because I used quite a bit of it. And remember, I can work with blue violets, and I can work with blue greens as well as my blue. Plus I can add white and I can add gray to any of those three colors. I can add white and black to my blue. I can add white and black to my blue green, and I can add white and black to my blue violet as well as grays to make something interesting. So let's see, let's make a blue green here. Here's my blue green. And I'm going to add some white to that. So I've mixed a tint of blue green to put in the place of my tint of blue from the first composition. And how about I go with a blue violet next? And I mix a middle value of that for here. Instead of the gray, I'm going to mix that there. And I'm going to go, let's add a little bit of gray to that, because I do want some grays, and put it in here. Well, maybe that got a little too dark, eh? Let's lighten that up a little bit. So my composition looks more like the original, but with different analogous colors. It's like the deepest, darkest midnight. A little darker there. why don't I do a tint of my blue, because we're doing blue, green, blue, violet, and I did a nice light blue, green. Let's do a nice light blue here. Now you can do whatever is analogous to your favorite color. So I chose this ultramarine blue, a kind of periwinkle, as my favorite color, but maybe your favorite color is peach, so it's a kind of orange, or maybe your favorite color is, I don't know, sunshine yellow. I'd be interested to know what you make as an constant, hue constant, as a monochromatic with your favorite color, adding grays and whites and blacks to it to create tints and tones and shades. And then would be interested in seeing what you mixed. So, you know, starting next week, I'll start holding our drop-in Zoom sessions. It would be so cool if you dropped in and showed me your color mixing exercises and also how you're starting your first serious painting, your first grisaille. It'll be fun for me to see. I love this stuff. I think it's beautiful and it's fun. So now let's take a look. And let's compare. So I'm using the same color, the same blue color. And this is monochromatic, where I used white, black, gray, plus my favorite color. And here I took my favorite color and then the two colors adjacent to it on the color wheel, which is blue-green and blue-violet, plus white and gray and black. And I create a very different painting. They have similarities because, of course, blue is constant throughout it. But look at how much flatter this looks compared to this. I think that purple, that spark of purple and green, really lift this one up and make it much more interesting. So we have worked with different hues. We have worked with different values of those hues by adding white and black, creating tints and shades. And now we've created tones of colors because we've added light gray, darker grays to our colors. And so we've started to work with yet another of the contrast of colors, which is intensity. So when we squeeze out our colors straight out of the tube, our primaries are really intense because they're pure hues. And then when you mix them together to create secondaries, they become a little bit less vibrant. And then when you mix grays into it, they become neutral. So what this means is that a painting can have a difference of chroma, and it can have, or hue, and it can have a difference of value with light and dark values and middle values of a color. And it can also have a difference in intensity. Another word for that is saturation. And so like this is very intense, very saturated. And so is this. It's less intense because I mixed a little red in it. But it's less intense. And then this is really neutral. It's almost purely gray. And then this is a tint. It has white in it. It's still pretty intense. And this is pretty, look at it, even as dark as this is, it's a pretty clean color. the shade of black, of blue black, is pretty intense, and so is that tint of the blue. It's pretty intense. So the only places where the colors are neutral are right here where they've become grayed down. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to do an intensity scale. So we've done a value scale, we've done monochromatic, and we've done analogous. And now we're going to do an intensity scale. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that blue and I'm going to mix different grays into it. My blue in with that gray and less of that gray. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And how many levels do we need? And let's go to no color. Just black and white with no color. Needs to be the same value. Okay. And so what we see here is the color going grayer and grayer and grayer to no color. So this is a saturation or intensity. So look at the contrast between an intensity scale and a value scale. You notice that the value hasn't really shifted very much. It's pretty much the same lightness and darkness. What's become different here is that the color has become no color or neutral as a gray, whereas here the color has gone lighter to darker. Do you see the difference? So that is what we call an intensity or saturation scale. And that's a pretty important thing to remember. When we think about the contrast of color, remember, contrast of hue is what we mean with what color is that, because hue is another term for color. And a contrast of value is what we mean when we describe the lightness and the darkness of a color. When we add white to a color, we make a tint. When we add black, we make a shade. And the third contrast is that of intensity or saturation. And that is a description of how intense or pure or unmixed a color is. And when we create gray, we're working with a neutral color. And so when we describe a color, so this is a neutral color or a dead color. Oh, let me put it here. This is a neutral or dead color. And then these colors here are semi-neutral because they have some gray in them, and then this is the pure color. So when we add grays to a color, we can neutralize it. There's another way to neutralize colors, and that is by adding some of its complement. We're going to do that in a little bit, but not just yet. What we're going to do now is return to our color wheel while this dries and return to the idea that we touched upon earlier, that on one side of the color wheel we have warm colors, and on the other side of the color wheel we have cool colors. And we work with temperature when we're working with analogous colors. We're already choosing either warm or cool colors. So when I did this little painting using my favorite color and then the colors analogous to it, so blue-green and blue-violet, plus white and black and grays. I was working with Analogous Colors, the colors next to it, and this painting is a cold painting. Can you see? It feels like night, or it feels like it has something to do with the ocean, maybe with trees, even though it doesn't have any subject, it's just squiggles. It's associated with ice, with water, with sky, with foliage. And if I had done my analogous color or temperature study using the warm colors, it would have had a different association. You might have thought of summer, you might have thought of fire, you might have thought, depending on whether I did a lot of tints or a lot of shades, you might have thought of passion and sex. So it depends on what you're wanting. Oh, and if I added a lot of blacks to it, so black plus orange gives you browns. It could have been very earthy. So it depends on which side of that color wheel, whether you're working with cool colors or with warm colors, what the analogous color scheme will give you. Now, it's suffice it to know that when you're painting, one of the things that you can do is use a contrast of temperature, not just a contrast of color or hue, not just a contrast of value, colors going lighter, colors going darker, not just colors going brighter and more neutral. You can also have colors become warmer or cooler. So all of this leads us to the really fun stuff. Now we're going to play with making a color look like it's something completely else. Is we're going to draw two squares, and each one of these squares is going to have another square in the middle. Actually, let's do 3 squares, because I am getting tired of mixing colors, and I'm going to truncate this color lesson. So, 3 squares with squares in the middle. I mean, you can make them circles if you want to. All right, so what I want you to do is to mix the same orange. You're going to put the same orange in the center. So I mixed enough orange. And I made my orange with yellow ochre and cadmium, but you can make it with whatever you want. Just make sure it's the same exact orange in all 3 squares. It's the same orange in all 3 squares, right? You can see that. It's the same orange. All right, I'm gonna wash my brush. I'm going to take red and surround my orange with red, because you know that red is analogous to orange. Now I have to take the same value blue. So I'm going to grab my cerulean. I think that's about the same value. I don't want to go with ultramarine because that's a much darker blue. I want to play fair here. And now I don't want to leave any white around my orange because I want my orange to interact with that blue. And now I have to create a gray that's that same value. So middle gray. All right. All right, there. Okay. So remember, it was the same exact orange. I haven't changed the orange. Isn't this amazing? In the analogous color, where the orange is next to a red, the color almost seems to sink in. It's chilling out, eating popcorn, binging on Netflix in its sweats, okay? It's like, my best friend is here, my boyfriend or girlfriend is here, and we're just chilling, watching our favorite show, eating popcorn. That's what this color combination is. So this gives you a clue about how to use analogous colors in a painting. So if you want to make a painting that is chill, like relaxed, a painting that shows things in harmony and coming together, you can use analogous colors. How different is that from this one? Look at that orange. It is floating in front of that blue. It's high as a kite. It is the loud drunk at a party, this orange. It is on the dance floor, twerking. Everything, even the fingernails are twerking. Everything is happening here. And the reason for that is that this orange is next to its complement. Colors that are opposite each other on the color wheel are complements, and complements energize each other. So if you want to make a painting really sizzle, really pop, or a part of your painting call attention and become the focal point, you use complementary colors because it makes the colors really pop. Now look at this. Look how interesting this is. Now see, my gray dried a little darker than it needed to. But look at the difference between the analogous and the complementary. Notice that the orange next to the gray, which is a neutral color, starts to behave like it does when it's next to the complement. That is to say, it's really hopping. It's really calling attention to itself. It is wiggling wildly on the dance floor. So this is important because sometimes you don't want to use a complementary color because it's kind of obvious. Take, for example, the complement red and green. Okay, I have to tell you, red and green have kind of been ruined by Christmas cards and decoration. So like if you put red and green together in a painting, it's going to totally look like some cheap Hallmark Christmas card. So what you might want to do then is to add a complement. So instead of just doing red and green, you could do red and gray, or you could do green and gray to make the color act like its complement, which is what we see here. And what we call this in the contrast of colors is simultaneous contrast, where you make a color behave like it's next to a complement by placing a gray next to it. And it's a very sophisticated use of color, so something for you to think about. So what we've done is we've tried the same orange in different squares and placed it next to an analogous, placed it next to a complement, and placed it next to a gray. And if we wanted to try something else, we could try placing that orange. Where's my orange? Here it is. try placing my orange and surrounding it with pure black and see what happens. And what happens to my orange when I put it next to black is that it takes on the extreme qualities of itself. So, what do I mean by this? Warm colors have a tendency to proceed, to move forward in space, and cool colors have a tendency to recede, to move back in space. White has a tendency to float or proceed in space, and black has a tendency to recede or sink in space. So what happens when I place that orange next to the black or surrounded by black is it really pops forward and floats in front and seems like a much lighter color than it really is. And the reason for that is because it is next to a black. So that is the end of our first color mixing exercise. And I know I've been tearing these out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to poke these back in here so that I can save them all. I can tape them or I can staple them back into my sketchbook so that I can have, I want you to think of these as your cheat sheets. And so here, let's not forget to make our notations. And so I'm going to grab a pencil, and here I'm going to say contrast of extension. That's called extension. Extension. This is analogous. This is complement. This is simultaneous. So you're going to be doing this in your own sketchbook, and all the instructions are in that first assignment sheet. And at the end of that, there is a very quick video that you don't have to watch now because God help you. You know, heaven help you. You've already been mixing colors, and you've either sped forward if you went faster than me, or put it on hold while you mix the colors to keep going at the same pace as me. So you have already done a lot of mixing for one day. You've done enough, right? You don't need to watch that other video right now, but it's good for you to keep it as a refresher in a day or two. If you start to forget, you open your sketchbook and you look at these colors and you go like, huh? Oh my God, we did so much. What does this mean? Watch this little video. I think it's only like 7 minutes, and it very quickly talks to you about the color wheel, temperatures, and complements. So it's a very nice little refresher. I hope that you enjoyed your first color mixing exercise. At our next session, we are I'm going to give you a PowerPoint lecture instead of a demo. And we're going to look at another artist doing demos. And we are going to learn what a grisaille, imprimatura, verdaccio are, and how artists use these indirect painting techniques to create really amazing paintings. Now, they don't have to be realistic. They can be very impressionistic, but you can make really amazing paintings. And I work with grisaille still. Most of my paintings are not grisaille, but I do work with grisaille, and I think it's a fabulous technique. Not everybody likes it. A lot of people are like, oh, no way. But it's good for you to know all the different terms and all the different techniques at your disposal. Just like it's good to know all the different color theories, because they let you make decisions as to what you want to say in a painting. For example, if you wanted to make a painting that was very relaxing and harmonious, you would use Analogous. And if you wanted to create a painting that had a lot of action and a lot of emotional intensity, you would use Complements. All right, artists, thank you for joining me today. I hope you had fun. I hope you were able to zone out of the stupid virus for a while and just chill out and have a good time mixing colors. This is the most fun I have had since the virus started, because I have been so busy getting ready for putting on my courses online that I have not had time to paint. And so thank you, because I've had to do these color mixing exercises so that you could see what to do. So thank you. Thank you, artists, for forcing me to sit down and take a couple of hours to mix colors, because, wow, I feel really relaxed right now, like I just came back from vacation. Have a great rest of your day or evening, and I will see you soon in the virtual world.